Chief Justice John Roberts is almost certainly compromised, and he's demonstrating that in real time right now in these various battles against President Trump. It's not just the fact that he's going after President Trump. I have thought that John Roberts has been compromised since Obamacare. I should have known before then. I mean, he was appointed by George W. Bush. That should have been the first sign. He was very young when he was appointed as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, giving the deep state and the globalist elite cabal somebody that they could control, leading the Supreme Court for decades. And that's what has been happening ever since. We knew, I think, with very over 90% certainty, that he was a full-blown globalist, completely controlled by somebody, globalist elite cabal, communist China, the deep state, whatever. Probably multiple people have a piece of John Roberts in some form or fashion. And we knew this because of Obamacare. I mean, he had to jump through some intellectual hoops. He had to do some imaginary cartwheels and sprinkle fairy dust on it to make it somehow stick that Obamacare, which is clearly, blatantly, unambiguously unconstitutional, he made it constitutional using some sort of weird judicial voodoo to shock everybody. I wasn't shocked, but everybody else apparently was shocked when it happened. And ever since then, he's been called on to by his handlers, his controllers, his puppet masters. They've called on him to make certain decisions or do certain things or make certain statements at very opportune times. I'm not saying they control everything that he does. They might. I don't think they do. But they do, especially when he does things that sort of shock people or surprise them or whatever. That's a pretty good indicator that, yeah, that was a directive sent down from his owners. So the latest version is one that I wouldn't have had it on my bingo card. I didn't expect them to go down this road, but apparently they are. He is attacking President Trump, mildly, but still, enough to where it's making the news, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, John Roberts rebuked Donald Trump over this, that. Let's start with the original story, shall we? This comes to us from Chris Powell over at trendingpolitics.com, or trendingpoliticsnews.com. Rogue anti-Trump judge hit with articles of impeachment. A House GOP lawmaker has officially filed articles of impeachment against Chief Judge James E. Boasberg of the United States District Court of the District of Columbia, accusing him of abusing his judicial power to block President Trump's deportation efforts. Congressman Brandon Gill from Texas introduced the resolution on Tuesday, citing Boasberg's intervention as a direct constitutional violation that obstructed the president's enforcement of immigration law. Quote, by thwarting President Trump's lawful efforts to deport violent illegal alien gangsters, Judge Boasberg created a constitutional crisis. He is unfit for judicial office. The resolution introduced in the House of Representatives formally accuses Boasberg of high crimes and misdemeanors, specifically charging him with abuse of power by interfering in the executive branch's authority to enforce federal law, including the Alien Enemies Act. The resolution states Chief Judge Boasberg, in violation of his oath of office, did knowingly and willfully use his judicial position to advance political gain while interfering with the president's constitutional prerogatives and enforcement of the rule of law. Now, look, I am not one that says, oh, they're ruling against Trump, impeach them. I have never called for impeachment. I almost did a segment last week saying stop calling for impeachment. That's not the proper process. I actually did do a segment that involved John Roberts where I said there's only really two ways to make this work. Either the legislators, Capitol Hill, does something about it, limits the jurisdiction, which they could do, limits the jurisdiction of judges. That would work if I thought that we could get 60 votes in the Senate, which we can't. There's no way. You wouldn't get one Democrat, let alone the necessary at least 7, if not more, if you had some Republican rhinos backing out. So legislation won't work. That leaves only John Roberts with the ability to cut this off, to stop the activist judiciary from trying to get in the way of President Trump's agenda, from trying to stop President Trump from rightly, legally, and constitutionally being the chief executive of the United States of America. This is the judiciary that is supposed to be the weakest branch of the three co-equal branches. They're supposed to have basically the least chance of corruption, and yet here we are seeing massive, widespread corruption across the entire judiciary. And John Roberts has the power to prevent that, to stop it. All he has to do is make a ruling that any suits, any judgments, any decisions against the Trump administration, or any administration for that matter, they go expedited straight to the Supreme Court for a ruling before they are initiated, before the rulings are allowed to be made. This makes sense because, again, they're not trying to stop him. They're trying to slow him down, to get in his way, throwing things up against the wall to see what sticks, doing the best lawfare that they can from their position of weakness. Unfortunately, it's working, and that falls directly on John Roberts. Now we have this particular case where this does make sense to be an impeachment because he really truly is abusing his power. Okay, this is not one where there's some gray area. Oh, maybe it was illegal if he fired these people or that. No, this is a judge telling a president that he cannot do what he is lawfully empowered to do by invoking the act, by declaring, he's already declared the invasion. That was necessary. He's already declared Tren de Aragua a terrorist organization. Every I is dotted, every T is crossed. This is a no-brainer. And for him to come out against that does demonstrate pure political bias, 100%. Because you cannot make a legal case to stop President Trump from deporting people. Not like this. He followed the law exactly how it was written. They have nothing to hang on him for this. Which is why, again, I'm not in favor of impeaching this judge, impeaching that judge, but this judge should definitely be impeached. This is why, according to Fox News, Chief Justice John Roberts decided now is the time for him to chime in. He said, for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. Wrong. Not in this case. Okay? All the other cases, Trump's appealing, sending him up, trying to get him to the Supreme Court, yada, 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 that's great. In this particular case, no. This is an emergency. This is clear, blatant, unambiguous. John Roberts should have come out and said, look, it's unfortunate that it has to come to impeachment. We're going to expedite this case and get this straightened out before you can even vote on an impeachment. That would have been the proper response. And even in rebuke, even if he's like, look, I don't like that you guys are impeaching. It should have gone up to the appellate court. I can understand why you're doing it, because at first glance, this decision by this extraordinarily biased judge seems to be politically motivated. As a matter of fact, as John Roberts should have said, as a matter of fact, it's clear as day. Prima facie, this is a bad decision. And John Roberts is trying to cover up that bad decision by chiming in and saying, you should have appealed. Well, he has been appealing. It won't be communist China. It won't be the cartels. It won't be the Democrats. It won't be Russia. It won't be even the uniparty swamp. None of those things will be able to take down the United States of America, at least in the short term, not while President Trump is in the White House. The only thing that can take down this nation with President Trump in the White House, other than, of course, God, if he chooses. The only thing that could take down this nation is this activist judiciary. They are dangerous, folks. And they have Chief John Roberts, the compromised Chief Justice of the United States of America, cheering them on, helping them along, running cover, denying appeals. This is very bad. Unfortunately, I don't have a remedy. I don't know a solution to this one other than prayer, because we can't stop him. President Trump may or may not be able to stop him. And that's it. Nobody else could. John Roberts and his merry band of judicial activists, judicial supremacists, let's call it what it is, they're trying to destroy this nation. And unfortunately, they might succeed. I appreciate you watching that clip. If you want to find all the other places where you can follow my work, the best place to do that is at jdrucker.com/find. Be sure to subscribe, be sure to like, and subscribe in other places like Apple Podcast or wherever, because it helps.